Hey everybody, Commodore Vice here, on the very first episode of Navigating the Game, a YouTube series where I intend to show and highlight various different RPGs that you might be interested in, teach you how to play them. Today's game, 7th Sea. 7th Sea is a swashbuckling adventure tabletop role-playing game that focuses on high action. It's very much Errol Flynn meets Dread Pirate Roberts. In this video, I'm going to go over some of the basic systems and settings, teach you a little bit about the world and how the game works, just to gauge whether you're interested or not. After that, I'll show you in some later videos how to play the game, how the system works, and some more intricate detail about the story. The system for 7th Sea is actually relatively simple when compared to other tabletop role-playing games. It's got your basic trait plus skill dice pool setting, where you'll add the two together and roll a number of d10s to get a result. Those results are called raises. You'll take the result of your dice roll, put the dice together into groups of 10s. Each group of 10 or more is considered a raise. You spend one raise to do some sort of action or counteract some sort of difficulty. There are also hero points, which you can earn by taking action that your GM finds invigorating, or even your fellow players. And these hero points can be spent to activate abilities, potentially save you from death, or maybe even change the narrative. There are also narrative bonuses in this game, where if you describe or take heart in your character and present to the table the fantastic and amazing things they can do, and you go into detail about how they swing from the chandelier and draw their blade, your GM may very well give you bonus dice for that. It's even in the book. Story-based advancement is the next major point. It's something that really drew me into this game, because it has a sense of advancement that is very different than others I've found. Typically, you'll look at like Dungeons and Dragons or other RPGs where if you kill a certain bad guy, or you kill a certain number of bad guys, or you do a particular task, you get a certain number of XP that you can spend on various other abilities, or you hit a cap where you actually gain new abilities in that level. 7th Sea works differently, and it works in a way that I personally like. Basically how it works is every ability point or background or advantage you are trying to earn has a point value. Now, those point values are usually from like 1 to 5-ish. And how you accrue points for those values is completing stories. The stories in 7th Sea are marked on a number of steps. For example, saves the damsel. If you save the damsel, you have to locate the damsel, make a journey to where she is being held, and then rescue her. That's 3 steps. That is a 3-step story. Completing those 3 steps is 3 points towards your next advancement, which I find personally awesome. And each character tracks these separately, unless of course it's a GM story arc in which everybody can get them, but we'll get into that later. The world of 7th Sea takes place in a setting that's different than what you may expect playing Dungeons and Dragons. It takes place in a 1600s as opposed to medieval, where flintlock pistols, rifles, and ships are sailing the seas, and you've got even cannons. The advancements make an interesting twist onto the usual medieval setting, and armor is substantially less interesting. Also a good point to note is that the world it takes place in is called Thay, and it is very similar to our world, but important to recognize that it is not. If you're a history buff, you may recognize major events where the country that seems an awful lot like Spain got into a war with the country that seems an awful lot like France. There are many of those situations where, once again, if you're a history buff, you'll be able to spot them and have a little bit of interest in it, and maybe even a little bit of insight. However, it's important to note that Thay is not Europe as we know it, simply because the country that's kind of like Spain has a lot that's also not like Spain, and the country that's kind of like France has a lot that's also not like France, or it's taken to some character extreme. But if you are following along, it's interesting, familiar, easy to adapt to, but different enough. An important thing to note about the world is that magic is real. It's not just, pirates and swashbucklers, but there are intricate traps and magical artifacts that one can find, a legendary seventh sea that some people believe exists on a different plane of existence, undead, vampires, monsters that hide in the shadows. All of these things exist in Thay, but it's also important to note that magic isn't everywhere. You're not likely to play a wizard or witch in PC form. PCs are typically mundane individuals, but adventurous and heroic in their own right, who often oppose magical forces. There are quite a few royal bloodlines in the game that have magic in their blood, and the royals aren't always the nicest. That was just a brief overview of 7th Sea to see if you were interested. If you were, I will be posting more videos on further going into the dice system, further going into the world, how one might create a character, and how one might actually run the game. I will have them up in the title end card for you to go ahead and select and continue the adventure. Also, should be a link down in the description that is to Drive-Thru RPG. That's straight to the 7th Sea book if you're interested in picking it up and you want to learn more and play it. Also, if you're interested in learning more about 7th Sea or other games that I will cover in the future, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. It would really help the channel. And I hope to see you along for the voyage.